Thank you for joining me, and welcome to the channel. My name is Darren, and I'm a Northern BC gamer. This is the channel that focuses on games, primarily role-playing games, but I'll occasionally branch out to tabletop miniature games and perhaps even video games. If these are topics that interest you, please give the channel a like and follow us for some actual play audio podcasts and other gaming content. This video is the first of my campaign journal series, and tonight we'll begin a conversation about the behind-the-scenes action involved in setting up and planning our playthrough of Paizo's Starfinder Adventure Path, Drift Crashers. My plan is to record these campaign journals and post them approximately a chapter or two after the corresponding session has been played. Tonight we'll be discussing Session 0, my plans for it, how things went. As Session 0 is planning a character creation session, there isn't any action, no actual gaming happening. My goal with these is to answer questions, give suggestions to the players while they finalize their character creation. And from this, I can start to get a feel for how the players want to run their characters, and hopefully I'll see a little bit of the group dynamic start to take shape. We'll start by discussing my table rules, my expectations from my players. This is where I give them an idea of what to expect from myself as a GM as well. We'll discuss how my Session 0 actually played out. And beyond that, we'll give you guys an introduction to the characters themselves and my initial thoughts about their roles and possible story beats for individuals. So, on to the discussion. Session 0. Session 0 in my games is a day to get together with my players to discuss the creation of their characters and the group dynamics, table rules, expectations about the games, the game itself, the players, and give them some expectations to have about me. I start that with a roundtable introduction. This allows new members of the group to get a brief feel for who they're gaming with. As important as it is in person, I find it even more so with online gaming. I encourage my players to give a brief rundown of their gaming experience and a rough idea of where they are in the world. Anything about themselves or their character ideas they'd like to share. For instance, my name's Darren. I am a gamer. I live in Northern BC. Prince George, BC, and to be specific, the heart of winter right now, being January in 2024. I have been a gamer since the age of 8, way back in 1981, when I was introduced to Dungeons & Dragons by my brother, who'd been introduced by a friend of his. I have played all kinds of systems. I've played almost all of the Dungeons & Dragons versions except the original Little Brown books and 4th edition. I just never had an opportunity to play 4th. I was playing other things at the time when that was popular. But I've played other things like Starfinder, as you have guessed, because that's the topic of this particular game. But in the old days, I used to play things like Star Frontiers, Top Secret, World of Darkness, Champions and the Hero System, among a great many other game systems I've forgotten the names of over the years. I've always been a GM. Maybe the first 3 years I just played because my brother was running games for me, but once I started teaching my other friends how to play, I started running games for them, and it's what I do, it's what I enjoy in gaming. Beyond that, I play tabletop miniature games as well, specifically X-Wing. I play a little bit of Armada, and I'm interested in other things, but with my eyes not being good for painting anymore, my hobbies are usually limited to the ones that provide painted miniatures, like X-Wing and Armada. Those are games that I will probably discuss on the channel. I also enjoy the odd video game here and there, usually old ones. I'm still enjoying Battlefront from PlayStation 4 that came out probably 7, 8 years ago now. I work in a hospital. I'm not a doctor, but I work in the kitchen. And beyond that, I'm I'm in my 50s now. I have a couple of kids. They're grown up, have lives of their own, so my time has returned to being mine to spend gaming with people. So I've decided to start putting things out on a channel. And that would be my introduction of myself to new players. Um, Gaming is a social interaction, so I like to start by being social and encouraging it in the players. I don't expect them to be as involved in their explanation of who they are and what their gaming history is as I might be, but if that's something that they want to volunteer, they're more than welcome to. It lets them be comfortable with how they introduce themselves. I'm not going to judge somebody just because they say, "Hey, my name's Bob. I've only been gaming for a little while." That's about it. That's cool. If that's what you're comfortable sharing with your group, the first time you're introduced to them, that's what you're comfortable sharing with your group. I'm a GM, so I like to give my players a little bit better feel for who I am because I'm the one running the game and I'm the one they have to trust to tell them a good story. And if maybe them hearing how long I've been running games gives them that feel, great. Um, my players have been really good at keeping table talk to a minimum while we've been playing Drift Crashers. So any chance I have to have a conversation with them, whether it's on break, which I leave the recording on during our break, um, so that, if players have something they want to chat about, they can. If we want to chat about the weather or work or the game, whatever, it gives you a chance to see how I discuss things with my players. But we also discuss things before the game and after the game. In my main Attack of the Swarm game, my players are much more free with the table talk because I'm more permissive of it. Not even being more permissive of it, but they're not being recorded, so there's no pressure of that. But it is something I've noticed in this game, so I do try and take advantage of every opportunity I can to chat with my players because I don't want it to just be, hey, we're getting together to record something. I want it to be, hey, let's get together and play a game and have fun together. And if that means breaking character and joking around, it means breaking character and joking around. That's a big part of role-playing games, and it's a big part of the enjoyment of the game that I've always had is the social aspect. So take that chance, take that opportunity, especially right at the beginning of the game, to be social with your players and have a chat about it. Introduce yourselves. Say, hey, I'm especially in this day and age of gaming over the internet. You're not gaming with your best friend down the road or your 5 other friends who all live in town. If you're gaming online, there's a good chance maybe you're gaming with somebody you knew from your childhood. Maybe you're gaming with a whole bunch of people you've never met. My main game, I've got 3 players from town and 3 players from out of town. The previous game, I had 2 players on Vancouver Island, 2 players in town, and 1 player joined us for a short time. He was from Texas in the States, but was living in New Zealand. Drift Crashers has 1 player from in town with me. That's Darren. And Catherine, Zane, JJ, and Todd are scattered across the American Midwest Eastern Seaboard. We're all over. Some of them know each other and have met each other, and some of us have gamed for a while together. But for me, I don't know these people, so it's also important for me as a GM to at least get a vague feel for how long my players have been playing, because it gives me an idea of how I'm going to approach things with them and what kind of expectations I might have of them. And we'll get into that a little bit more as I discuss the players later and get into the game. But the next section we'll break into is table rules. Table rules, I find, are very important to discuss with your players. And these aren't things that are house rules. This isn't a fancy way of doing criticals, or whether you're using the critical hit deck or the fumble deck. It's about the social rules of your table. The expectations of the guests in your home if you're running it in your home, or the guests on your digital table if you're running it through virtual tabletop, or your table at the store, which may include the store's rules and expectations of the people who are using their space. For me, I like to keep my rules simple, and I like to let my table rules give my players an idea what kind of game I'm going to run. My first table rule that I give out to everybody, number 1, is the rule of attendance. My players are allowed to miss any and all sessions they need to. I never get offended about it. I don't get upset about it. There's no reason to, as far as I'm concerned. And the first thing I will tell everybody is, this is a game. Real life takes precedent. I ask that they, drop me a short message and say, hey, I can't make it tonight. I don't care why they can't miss a session. Maybe their kid's sick. Maybe they got a school play to go to. Maybe they've got work. Maybe they've had a really long week and they're just wiped out. Maybe they've got a date. Maybe their wife has in-laws over and you have to spend time with them, because otherwise your wife will sleep you on the couch tonight. Or perhaps you're just not feeling it and you just really don't feel like gaming that day. And these are all perfectly valid excuses as far as I'm concerned. It's a game. If you can't make it, you can't make it. If we have enough players to play anyway, we'll play anyway. I'm not going to kill off your character while you play. I'm not going to do nasty things to your character while you play. I'll take reasonable actions that seem to fit in the character of your character that you've portrayed so far. If you can't drop a message, you can't drop a message. I'll just assume you're busy. Maybe you forgot. Whatever. But if you need to miss a session, miss a session. I don't want my players to ever think I'm going to kick them out of the game or do nasty things to them because I miss a session. Real life takes precedent. It's a game. The next rule of my table, it's the next most important rule. I think I have these kind of listed in order of importance. At least they seem to be so far. The next one is, this is a team effort. Be willing to play your character as a team player. If you want to create a lone wolf type character, don't create a lone wolf type character who doesn't want anybody around and is just going to try and operate without anybody else and basically kind of steal the spotlight. If you want to be a lone wolf type character, play a lone wolf type character along the vein of Wolverine from the X-Men. Is my example of them. He's somebody who's capable of acting on his own. He certainly has his own comic book, often enough, and his own stories and his own adventures. But when he's needed to be part of a team, he's part of a team. He doesn't question it. He works with the team because it's a team effort, and the more people there are that work together, the more likely they are to succeed at your goal. And it's a role-playing game. You're here to have fun with your friends. So along with, hey, it's a team game, function as be a team player. No matter how you create your character, be somebody who's willing to work as part of a team, because it's going to be required. The other rule that goes along with it is don't be a jerk. And that is very specifically, as a player, don't be a jerk. If your character's a bit of a jerk, as long as the other players are willing to deal with it, play along with it, and you're not really being a jerk to them. Maybe you're just being a smartass. There's a thin line between those two things, so tread it carefully. But most other players will put up with a smartass. They're not going to put up with a jerk. So maybe don't let your character be a jerk, but as a player, don't be a jerk to the other players. And it's kind of goes hand in hand with don't have a character who's a jerk, because it is very hard to tell the difference between the two. Unless you're really good friends with them and they know and are okay with it. I've had games where people who were good friends thought they could get away with it and ended up almost ending the game within 6 sessions because nobody else wanted to play with them because they're playing their character so much of a jerk, despite warnings. That character was removed from the game. Solved the issue. Game went on for another year and a half, almost 2 years, and ended up wrapping up at the end. So be willing to play as part of a team. Play as a group of friends having fun. And this isn't a rule that I have needed for this group. I didn't expect to need. But it is something years and years ago in the past I had issues with. And this was something that is, super important because I haven't necessarily played with all of these people before. Some members of the group I have played with before, some for quite a while, some only for a year or so. Some, this is my first game with them. But I also know the people, whether it's through having them on my table or through other avenues. So these people aren't complete strangers to me. And again, not an issue I expect to have, and I haven't, and I won't. I know these people, they're just here to have fun and play a game together. But something that I do feel a need to bring out, not even so much the don't be a jerk aspect, as much as the it's a team game. Play as part of a team. Even if you're playing a lone wolf character, make it a lone wolf character who, when it's time to be part of a team, is part of a team. Make the operative your lone wolf, because he can go do the crazy stuff all by himself while everybody else distracts the bad guys. Something like that, that's great. Have a character who can do that, but then when it's time to be as part of a group, be part of that group. Support the rest of the group and be a member of it. Don't just be that guy who's on the outside going, oh, you guys do your thing, I did mine. Don't be that guy. That's a jerk. All right. The next most important rule I stressed, especially with this game, is the use of narrative description and the rule of cool. Because we don't have cameras on our players in this game, I believe very much so that there is some communication that lacks between us and the people watching. If you're watching on YouTube, it doesn't affect the listening so much, but because, yes, we've got a map up most of the time, you can see what the players are doing, because it's also going to be posted largely on audio, as well on audio podcast sites, and because, again, there's no camera, so you can't gesture. And the map is small in the corner of the screen. I want them to make sure that they're describing what their players are doing. Narrative description is very important. That way, the people listening to the podcast have a better visualization, at least in their own head, of what things look like and how things appear and what you're doing. And narrative description leans very easily and very heavily into the use of the rule of cool. And those of you who don't know what the rule of cool is, it's the, hey, GM, I want to try something that's not explicitly in the rules, but it's something that, well, here's my idea. In the first session of Drift Crashers, while the pirates were trying to take the bridge, Flair at the pilot's seat decided, I'm going to shut down the inertial dampeners and rock the boat and see if I can knock these guys, off their feet a little bit, or, shake them around, put them on edge and give us an advantage. And that's not specifically in the rules of the game. There's no real specific effect for it. But yeah, make me a piloting check. See how well you do it. And if you do it, they're going to have to make a roll. If he does really well, they'll have a penalty on the roll, whatever. And he did knock a couple of them off target or whatever. I don't remember what effect I put on them. I think I knocked them prone, as a matter of fact. So it gave the characters a little bit of an advantage. And some of the players are good about remembering it, some of them not. And it's something that takes some getting used to. Because, in other games, you're not recording it, so you're not... Because there's less table talk. Slightly less, anyway. The mechanics of battle and stuff, yes, there's discussion of, but to a degree there's less table talk and less crosstalk about things, so a little bit less communication of what's going on. The narrative description is important. And it's something I've always tried to do as a GM, but sometimes can take a while to get used to as a player, so it's something that I wanted to remind them of. Not say you have to do this, but it helps. And if they, forget, say I move here and I want to attack him, I'll do a brief description of what you do and where you move and which attack and which person you're shooting at, so that the description gets out there. And it's a, polite, subtle reminder to the players to, hey, try to remember to do your narrative description. But it's also, as a GM, it's something I enjoy doing. So I don't mind doing it, but it gives them the opportunity to lean into, hey, I want to try doing this, because that sounds like it'd be a neat thing to do, and visually it'd be cool, and this isn't reality, it's a role-playing game, and what's the point of playing a role-playing game and being really cool characters if you're not doing really cool things? I would rather have them do really cool things that aren't in the rules that I have to makeshift on the spot, because that would be fun. The next rule that I have at my table, and I guess this is the one that's closest to a house rule, because it arguably affects game mechanics. Because some of these players are new to the game. Specifically new to Starfinder. This is the first time they played Starfinder. They created their characters 10 hours before the session, because that was the first time they heard I was running it, and they said, hey, can I play? Looked up the rules and created their character by themselves. But I allow players to make adjustments to their characters' build process, whether it's feats they've chosen or skills or spells or whatever, right up until they're level 3. Because it can sometimes take a little bit to get a real feel for exactly how your character works. And sometimes the things that you choose that you think are going to be really cool end up being something you just don't end up using, because it ended up not being as cool as you thought it was, and the opportunity doesn't come up, or a new book came out that had this really cool thing that fits way better, to the character that you have developed into over the course of 3 levels. In my experience, you're going, give or take, 3 or 4 sessions per level. So by the time you're 3rd level, you're 8 sessions in. Maybe more, maybe less, depending how quickly you level people in your games. Depends how long your sessions are. We're playing sessions that are roughly 2 hours long, give or take, from the look of the videos that I've been posting. So, 12 hours of game time is, I think, or 12 to 16 hours of game time is a reasonable amount of time to get a good feel for your character and let them make the adjustments they need as they go. Beyond that, the game has a system of mechanics with mnemonic editors, items, allowing you to tweak your character and edit them as the game goes on. gives you the opportunity to make changes as necessary. And then if things change, or as happened in my Starfinder game recently, the Starfinder Enhanced rulebook came out with some big changes to some of the classes, and a lot of new abilities for each of the classes and stuff for races and et cetera, et cetera. I again opened it up at that point because the characters are 6th level on that game, and said, hey, you know, if you need to implement these, go for it. If you think it's going to benefit your character, and they all did, because they benefit the characters, straight up. And I'm totally cool with that. You know, it's better versions of these character classes, so use them. And you know, if you need to make a change, bounce it off me. And if it's not too major, or if it's really going to work and it seems to fit better, and I don't have any big problem with it. Hint, I usually don't. Because as a GM, I want my players to have a good time, and if that's what's going to make the game more fun, let's have a little bit more fun. It's just switching out one ability of a given level for a different ability of a given level that gives you a different ability from now on. Oh no, you don't have access to the old ability, you only have the new one. That's fine by me. You know, so the ability to make changes to your characters is a little easier at the beginning of my games, and there are methods in the game to do it without having to bounce it off me. It's like, hey, can I get a mnemonic editor? I've got the money for it. If you're somewhere where you can buy it, yes, you can buy it, make your changes, have a nice day, bye-bye. Bounce them off, or let me know what they are. You know, if you wanna change something different, ask me about it. But I try and let people know that, you know what, sure, I run a reasonably serious game. I take my gaming seriously. I've been at it for 40 plus years. But it's a game, and it's for fun, and I want my players to have fun. So why wouldn't I let them know ahead of time that, you know what, if you end up making a decision that ends up just not working for you, not giving you the effect you want, and you're feeling like you're missing something because this other ability will work so much better, let me know. I'll probably let you change it. I don't want to be a jerk. That don't be a jerk thing, that applies to me too. You know, work as part of a team. If your character gets a neat character ability that initially as a GM feels game breaking, like a Vesk warrior with a reach weapon and the cleave and great cleave and spinning cleave and lunge combination of feats who can reach any opponent within 15 feet of him and attack every single one of them with the expenditure of a resolve point. Boy, that feels game breaking every now and then. Till you decide, let's work with that. Let's approach him with the group with a huge group of enemies over here, and a few other guys on the other side. Well, that character is going to immediately go to attack that huge cluster of enemies because he can deal with that. And play into it. Give him slightly weaker enemies that he's going to be able to cleave through in a reasonably short period of time, and that aren't that much of a threat to him, because boy, that'll let him use that cleave feat that he's got, and it'll be effective, because if those same group of 30 enemies was attacking the rest of the group would be in big trouble, because they're not the soldier with the ability to just lay into the enemies. They're an operative and a mechanic and an envoy. That's not so safe. 30 guys, even if they're lower level, some of them are going to hit you and do damage. And with 30 people attacking you, it's more than some. So be part of the team too. Play into the character's strengths. Let them make use of the strengths of their characters. Let them make use of those abilities that they've got, because that's what makes the game fun for them. And if they need to change something for it to be more fun, who am I to complain, unless it's something that I think is going to break the game. And given that I only use published material, or Paizo published material in my games, I have less concern about things being too broken. I haven't found anything that really is broken, and without just changing your perceptions of it. If you need to adjust your counters to adjust for the abilities your players have, do that. You're the GM, you can do that. Um, and last but not least, the final rule of my table, which has come about only in about the last, I'm going to say 10 years, probably really only about the last 5 years. I kind of took a bit of a break from gaming for a while because I was playing more tabletop miniatures, playing more X-Wing, like a lot of X-Wing. And some of my gaming groups had broken off and people had moved, etc. over the years. So I didn't really have a group that I was really happy playing with for any length of time. Um, but it has come about due to the advent of the tablet and the cell phone. And the following rule is in place at my table. Pay attention to what's going on when it's not your turn. This is a very important rule for players to pay attention to. Um, it's it's the one rule that I might get a little testy about. And I know it comes through the odd time when I'm GMing, especially online, when it's kind of obvious that somebody hasn't been paying attention. Um, if you get to a player's turn in the turn order, and you say, okay, it's your turn, what do you want to do? And their answer is, huh, what's going on? You say, okay, maybe you missed it. So you sum up what's going on, and they take their action, they do their thing. And then it happens again the next turn, and the next turn, and the next turn, week after week, until as a GM, to be polite, you change the way you approach it. And you say, hey, so-and-so, it's your turn. Bob, it's your turn. This is what's going on. And describe what's going on in the battle with everybody else in the group and all the other creatures in the group, something that would normally take a perception check, maybe for you to really pay attention to in a fight if your GM's a jerk. I don't think you do that to players. If their character's in a fight, they're paying attention to what's going on, unless somebody's being sneaky and sneaking around and is invisible or something. But they should have a vague idea what's going on, so I tell them. And if at the end of that, their answer is, huh, what's going on? Well, as a GM, you start getting perturbed, because you now have to lay it all out twice. Now, the first time it was, well, okay, maybe he wasn't paying attention, so we'll lay it all out for him. But now you're laying it out for him, and he's still not paying attention. And at that point, as a GM, I get a little testy, and I'm not mean about it, but I do try and give that slight emphasis to my repeating of what's going on to let them know very as subtly as possible that, hey, I've just repeated this a second time. Please pay attention. So it's a rule that I'm starting to put in my games because I have found people don't always pay attention. They've got other things to distract them. I've been guilty of it. Don't get me wrong. If you're playing in a role-playing game with other people, pay attention to what's going on when it's not your turn. Especially if you're playing online. I find it a little bit easier to do when you're playing in person because you're physically there with people and you're interacting with the environment. You're not staring at a computer screen. You're less likely to have another video playing off on the side. You're less likely to be playing games on your phone. But it can ruin the flow of the game. It slows things down. And quite frankly, for a GM, it can be a little irritating. So it is something that I ask of my players is to, hey, even when it's not your turn, especially when it's not your turn, you're paying attention when it's your turn. I don't question that. Until I tell you what's going on and you ask what's going on. Beyond that, once you start engaging with your turn, yes, you're paying attention to what's going on. You've got your description of the battlefield. You know what actions you're taking, and you know what actions you can take. And my players are good about knowing what they're doing and what they can do and knowing what their choices are. So once they're engaged, it's great. But make sure you're engaged even when other people are taking their actions, because it'll make it a lot easier and a lot faster when it comes to be your turn to have an idea what you want to do, because that way you might have figured out 2 initiative orders back, or 2 initiative steps back, that one of your buddies went down hard, and you know you're the next guy to go in the initiative order. You're going to have to get over there. So while the GM's doing the monster's actions, you can be ready to go. So when he goes, all right, Bob, it's your turn. What do you want to do? So-and-so's down. I'm dashing over to his location. I'm going past these monsters, so I'm going to have to tumble through and try and avoid attacks of opportunity so that I can get over there and give him serum healing. That's great. GM, you know what you want to do. It keeps things moving at a good pace, because keeping a good pace in combat helps keep engagement and helps things feel just that little bit more cinematic. And it's something that I do try and do. I try to keep, especially combat encounters, moving at a reasonable pace. Because, again, it keeps engagement, and it keeps the player's engagement. Keeps my engagement. It makes things more kinetic, more enjoyable, because it's constantly moving, it's constantly changing, until you reach the point where you're on top and the situation's done, and you relax and move on to the next thing. My session 0 was, in this game, spread out, rather than a solid group event. Now, this isn't uncommon. I tend to allow character creation to be done on a pretty open basis in my game. If you need help with it, I'm more than happy to help. I'll set up time to help you. Or if you drop me a message in the middle of the afternoon, if I have time, I'll drop what I'm doing. Just go sit down on the computer and open up a chat window, or, open up the voice channel and have a chat with my players. Answer questions for them, help them look things up, or explain how things work. Sometimes I'll have to look up exactly what it is they want to do and see how it works, so that we both understand how it works. But it's not uncommon. When I'm setting up a game, I give players the setup for the game when I'm inviting them to play it. That way they're not saying, sure, I'll play a Starfinder game, only to arrive and go, oh, I didn't want to play a war story. I'm not really interested in Attack of the Swarm. And then drop out afterwards. I would rather say, hey, this is the adventure path I'm running. This is the setup for the game. In this game, the setup was, you guys are a band en route to the opening gig for your new intergalactic tour to promote your new album. That's the setup for the game. So they all created characters based on that. And one of the specific roles I asked for them is, beyond your character class and your theme and your species, I want to know what your role is in the band. And that was something that they all glommed onto, and it's something that I repeatedly bring up during the game. I will refer to them by their role in the band, rather than their character class. Because that's who they are. Umbra isn't the Witch Warper, she's the lead guitarist. Yeah, she's a Witch Warper, and she's got Witch Warper abilities, and she does Witch Warper things. But in the game, she's the lead guitarist. When I'm doing the character intros for the game, I don't introduce them by their character classes. I introduce them by what role they have in the band. Because that's what the game is about. It's the story of a band taking a slightly longer and slightly much more interesting trip to the opening act of their gig, or of their opening gig of their tour. So the players who were interested said, "Yeah, I want to play in that. That sounds like fun," and they created characters that fit into those roles, and they found neat character classes for themselves and that they're happy with. But because not everybody could be there at once, it was spread out a little bit. The first character to be put forward was the Reptile. The Raptile is, or was, an NPC in the first Starfinder game I ran, which is kind of a mixed homebrew with some AP stuff jumbled in. He was the background NPC of Tom's character, Sid. The Raptile is a Vesk rap metal artist. Vesk rap metal, by the way, sounds a lot like Beach Boys. 1960s Beach Boys. Or 70s, whenever the Beach Boys were. Um, and, owned a mercenary company, which is how Sid knew him. And he's also the background character of Sid, or Tom's character, Sergeant Futch, in the Attack of the Swarm game I'm running. Futch and Sid also know each other. Sid has a background role in Attack of the Swarm. But the Raptile was this background character for both of them, and Tom has had an itching for a while to play the Raptile. And I said, hey, when I looked through the adventure setup for Drift Crashers, it gives you 4 or 5 ideas. A sports team, a bunch of corporate executives, research company, tourists on a pleasure ship, or a group of entertainers going to a gig. And I grabbed that immediately. I said, "Oh, that's perfect. That'll Raptile fit right in there." And Tom was right on that. He said, "Okay," and he knew what he wanted Raptile to be. So I knew what was coming with the Raptile, and I could tell other people. Because Tom wasn't there for that when he was on vacation at that time. He was out of town. I could give them an idea of at least what Tom was going to do for a character class and race-wise. Like I knew who the Raptile was. Um, the next character to be dropped in front of the group was Flare by Todd, because when the initial Session 0 was planned, Todd was on vacation with his family. It was, end of summer. Or the fall, I don't remember which it was. But either way, they were on vacation. They were out of town. So he wouldn't be there, but he had an idea for his character, and he had sent the picture to the group chat. And said, "Hey, this is Damien Flare Fast Hands. He's an icon technomancer, and he's going to be the drummer. He's a halfling, and that the image and the name and everything just it brought an image to mind of who the character was going to be. But when the actual day of the Session 0 ended up getting postponed, we ended up with Todd, who plays Flare, Darren, and Zane there. Again, Tom was unable to make it. He was sick at that point with the plague. And JJ was... I don't remember whether he was working or whether his kid was sick. I think his kid was sick that night. Painting the town puke. So we gave JJ a pass to deal with a sick kid, because that's just what you do. His kid wasn't feeling good. He had to go be a dad. That's I totally get that. I'm a dad myself. My kids have been sick in the past. I totally get it when they go to bathroom to throw up because it's the middle of the night. They gotta throw up bad, and they projectile vomit directly onto the toilet that had its lid closed and painted the entire bathroom puke. I've dealt with that, so I understood JJ's pain. I understood him not being able to make it. But Zane wanted to wait until everybody's characters were created before he played his, or decided what he was going to play. Zane has run a lot of Starfinder Society adventures over the years, done a lot of online stuff, and played a lot of Starfinder, or GM'd a lot of Starfinder. But he's got a lot of character ideas, and he wanted to find something that would fill a hole maybe in the group makeup. So he wanted to hold off, and I'm totally cool with that. When my gaming with my roommate, he has the same approach to character creation because we've gamed together for 30 years now. He has the same approach. He'll wait till everybody else has the character they want, and he'll find something else that'll fill the hole that he thinks is neat. So Zane held off on his character creation, and we did the specifics of Todd's character Zane, or not Zane, Todd's character Flair, and Darren's character Crumb. And having played a couple other Starfinder games with Darren and some D&D with him before, kind of watching him start to open up and get a little bit more creative and grab ideas a little bit more easily. This is the first character he brought mostly fully formed to the table, other than some of the specifics of, feats and things like that. But he came up with Crumb, the Skittermander mechanic. The audio, lighting, and pyrotechnician. And with that being his basis, I said, hey, I was looking at the mechanics, and one of the options for the mechanics, because they've got a lot of subclasses, drone mechanics, experimental weapon, experimental armor, exocortex, experimental explosives. You can create X number of grenades every time you take a 10-minute rest to regain your stamina. You don't have to decide what those grenades are until, effectively, they're in the air. And you want to decide, oh, I want it to be a shock grenade this time, because that just happened to be what I made. And it's a class feature, and it's an option you have to just, I create X number of grenades. Nobody else can use them. But it lets him be this crazy little pyromancer, or not pyromancer, but pyrotechnic, Skittermander, tech in the background, helping the band out, doing the pyrotechnics, doing the light shows, and gives him a neat ability that he has just leaned into. The name Crumb came from the Star Wars character Salacious Crumb, who hung out with Jabba the Hutt. And he kind of plays him as a helpful, but occasionally slightly crotchety, Skittermander. And that, painted a neat image in my head. It's like, oh, because looking ahead to the adventures, I knew there would be a point very shortly into the game where the characters meet their mirror universe twins, basically. And, well, that just means his mirror universe twin cackles that exact same cackle as you hear in Return of the Jedi when Salacious Crumb is, picking out C-3PO's eye. He's the evil little greasy Skittermander, and just so those two characters very quickly came to life. JJ and I believe, managed to get together a couple of days later, and did up stats for Achilles. Now this is the first time JJ had created a Starfinder character. The other guys, Darren has played in a couple of my other games, Into the Vast and Attack of the Swarm. And Todd and Zane also play in Attack of the Swarm. So they've gamed with me for a year, and they play Starfinder. They know what they're doing. So their character creation, pretty simple. Zane, perfectly capable of taking care of himself. I didn't have any questions. I don't even think Todd had questions. It was, just maybe there I might have given a suggestion or two, but I don't think so. I think he had everything down pat. JJ, on the other hand, though he played a few sessions of Starfinder, the Skittershot one-shot with Darren and Todd and one of our other friends, Scott, doing the character creation with him was more involved from a GM standpoint. I had to be involved with every step, every decision, explain what he could do and what his choices were, and what the classes could do, and what the species could do. And he had a neat idea. He wanted to just play a human, but he wanted to be a cybered up human. So I said, oh, okay, there's a theme that'll play into that. We'll make you a cyberborn. You know, it'll give you some extra abilities as you get higher in level. It's a short game, so he's only really going to get one of the theme abilities, the 6th level one, the 1st level knowledge ability that everybody gets. But he'll get an ability at 6th level that'll be a neat bonus. And somewhere along the line, I'll see what I can do to play up that part of his character. You know, I've given him a free standard cybernetic arm and leg and cybernetic eye. And he wanted to be a bit of a hacker type character, but with a technomancer in the group and a mechanic, that role is kind of covered. I'm pretty sure Crumb has a decent computer skill, and I'm pretty sure the Technomancer, I assume the Technomancer does. I haven't looked as closely at the character sheets. They're only 1st level. I haven't double-checked everything on them. But, so we set him up with, I believe, the hacker operative subclass, as it were, and made sure he had those abilities. You know, he found himself a neat piece of cyberware that allows him for short periods of time to be proficient with weapons he's not proficient with, which will allow him as an operative to use long arms or heavy weapons or whatever it is he chooses, which is a nice edge for him, which would be something we'll be able to play into later. And at that point, once his character had been created, and you know, I'd given everybody had their descriptions up on the page, Zane dropped his character, Strange Ed Jankowitz, very, very clearly modeled after Weird Al Yankovic. You know, down to his icon character, his token in the game is a picture of Weird Al from the probably cover of the single for Amish Paradise, because he's got the whole Amish outfit on, long hair and the beard and the whole outfit, as an envoy to fill that role in the group. And I grinned my head off when I saw that picture. I said, "Oh, okay, perfect. I have an idea of what he's going to do with this character, and that'll be fun." Sorry, Achilles' role in the band is he wanted to be keyboards. Speaking of important roles for everybody, Reptile's lead singer and rhythm guitar, Flair drummer, Crumb, sound, audio, and or sound, lighting, and pyrotechnician. And Strange Ed is modeled after Weird Al. He's the guy that writes the lyrics, or cleans up the lyrics, and background singing when Reptile's in the lead. And the last character in the group was Umbra, Catherine's character. The night before the game, I had posted in one of our X-Wing chats in the gaming forum there that the next day I was starting my Starfinder game. I'd put out an ad a couple of months ahead, previous to that JJ and Scott had looked at, as well as my other players had gotten involved and the group had formed. But the morning of the game, I get a message from Catherine saying, "I'd be interested in doing that. I wouldn't be able to start on time tonight. I'd be late because I have an X-Wing match. We're in a draft league. She was my team captain." And I said, "That's okay, because, you know, JJ's going to be late tonight. You know, it's all right if we start a little bit late. We can do a bit of session 0 with everybody. And if, you know, we get going, time to start, we'll start." And she said, "Okay." You know, I said, it's a 3-book AP. It's going to take at least a year, because we only play every other week. You know, just to make sure, you know, she knew what she was getting into and make sure she didn't think it was a one-shot or something like that. She said, "Yep, totally, that's cool. I can do that." I said, "Okay, you know, well, like, here's the Archive of Nethys for the rules of the game." I knew she plays Pathfinder 2.0, and I'd heard her discuss that before, so I knew she had a vague idea what she's doing. Um, and she's been gaming long enough that I think within 4 hours of receiving that message, um, she sent me the basic workup of her character. And I looked at it and went, oh, that's kind of cool. Okay, that really works. You know, she wanted to be lead guitar. She sent a picture of her guitar to the group, and everybody went, "Oh, that's awesome." But yeah, you know, within a day, she just worked it up. She had very few questions. I think I had very few suggestions. Um, you know, it's the group very quickly took shape, and everybody seems to really enjoy it. They've their characters have started to come to life. I've gotten a really good feel for most of them as the game has progressed. Um, Spoiler alert, unfortunately, Tom had to drop out of the game, so the Raptile has become an NPC, you know, kind of lurking in the background. Maybe at some point Tom will be able to rejoin the game, at which point, hey, the Raptile will be open for him. Um, but I was very impressed with how quickly Catherine put a character together that would not only be an interesting character, but be an interesting character that had some kind of interesting tie-ins to the adventure path. Um, I'm not going to spoil those now. I mean, they're not necessarily direct uh, things, but being a witch warper was an interesting choice as a character class because part of the adventure path is, by this point, anybody who's been watching the first few sessions, involves traveling to an alternate reality in the multiverse, which warpers reach into alternate realities in the multiverse to pull things out of for their magic. So that's an interesting tie-in with that character. I thought, ooh, that's neat. As I've said, most of the group or some of the group I've GM'd for in the last few years. Some since I first started running Starfinder, which in this group is Darren and Tom. They were in my first Into the Vast game, and that game started the beginning of April 2020. So right at the beginning of the plague, we'd been part of a Dungeons and Dragons group that a mutual friend of ours was running, running us through Minds of Phandelver, because he had just gotten into Dungeons and Dragons and wanted to run games for his friends. I had a blast in that game. I hadn't played in years, and I just had the most fun in the world playing with people I'd never gamed with before, like role-playing games. I'd played several of them I knew through X-Wing. But there were people there that I didn't know as well. So it was always, I always have fun playing with new people. I like introducing people to new games or being there when people are just introduced to gaming in general. I'd like to think I'm a good player. I might not be. I might be a bit of a jerk. Who knows? I don't play often enough to really have a good feel for how I am as a player anymore. But a couple of them, Todd and Zane, they joined my table just over a year and a half ago. Well, not even a year and a half. The beginning of Attack of the Swarm, which was probably about almost exactly a year before the beginning of Drift Crashers. So they played through 2 books of Attack of the Swarm with me. They're working on book 3 right now. They're going into chapter 3 on that, as the characters in Drift Crashers are finishing up chapter 2. Ooh, no, they're halfway through chapter 2 of book 1. Though, assuming the pace continues between the two, Drift Crashers will end before Attack of the Swarm does, by probably 5 or 6 months. But I've gamed with them for about a year, so I have an idea of what they're like as players. Again, JJ played a one-shot with me We've played a few sessions because we only play for about an hour at a time with that, just due to scheduling. But it's a one-shot, whatever. It's not a huge long campaign. It's, you're skitter shot. You're saving a crazy or a group of passengers from a ship's AI gone crazy. Um, and one who is, absolutely new to my table. I've never played a role-playing game with Catherine before. We've played X-Wing against each other. I'm proud of my record against Catherine. She's quite a good player, and I am not quite a good player, and I think I've managed to go 50-50, or close to it. When she beats me, but once in a while, I can get one in on her. One of my proudest moments in X-Wing. But it's a good group of players that I enjoy playing with, and they've each created interesting characters. We have amongst the characters in the group, each of the characters as well had to pick a key NPC to be aboard the ship, part of the crew, as well as something fancy that they brought to the ship by way of a ship feature. And part of the reason for this, in this game, it's very, very important. In general, in games, I find it's important to try and bring one or two NPCs, even if it's just part of your background, to the table to help flesh out your character, to give the GM ideas and adventure hooks. What's a better adventure hook than something that your character is personally going to be invested in? Unfortunately, Drift Crashers is very specifically an adventure path on rails. It is a roller coaster ride. I had read through it and totally understand. It's an adventure path on rails. The story goes where the story goes, and your chance to get off that story and have side stories on the side, pretty few and far between, very slim, and they're not necessarily placed anywhere where you want to get off and have that side adventure. You kind of want to get away from those places and continue on. So because of that, I let them know that, background characters, you can tell me about them, but the chances of them having any role in this adventure path are going to be very, very, very slim. But what the creators did is they built in a list of key NPCs and gave each of these roles a neat ability that would be useful to help out the group throughout the adventure path, or different stages of them. And I made everybody choose their key NPC. Tell me a little bit about them. They picked them by their role. I wanted a name. I wanted to know what species they were, and I don't know, anything else you wanted to tell me about them. And the same thing with the extra features that the Starship got. I don't remember the exact term for them off the top of my head. But each character chose one and brought the additional feature to the ship. So amongst the group, we have the Reptile, lead singer of the band. I took the Icon theme. He is a Vanguard. I believe it is I don't remember the name of it, but it's the Societal Rebel Vanguard. Because that just sings to the Reptile's personality. He's the rebel rap metal artist who is on the fringes of Vest community or society. Always pushing the boundaries, always pushing the edge, and may have spent the last of his money getting the album made and buying the ship that they're on so that they could make the tour and make back his fortune. So So he has brought on board Zaz, the silicone-based life form Quarlu um, socialite, um, to to help make sure that the money that's been invested in this is spent properly, and that Reptile is dealing with people in an appropriate way, because he has a bad reputation for being very, very brash and impulsive. So Zaz has come on board to smooth over social relations as a socialite. Has the ability to help give insight in social situations to the group, and of course the ship's feature that the Reptile brought aboard is the lavish living quarters, giving the crew and characters a bonus to saving throws against exhaustion and fatigue type effects, as long as they, have gotten themselves a long rest inside the ship, inside the last 24 hours. Flair, the halfling icon, again, Technomancer. He's the drummer of the group, and he has brought aboard a Vesk technician, lovingly referred to as Rick the Door Technician. For those of you, I'm sure will recognize that name. If you don't recognize the name, ask around. Somebody will tell you. But he's a technician. He can help customize consoles and do various things around the ship. He's one of the band's roadies. He helps set up and tear down. And the ship feature Flair brought aboard was the portable virtual entertainment console, or as I like to refer to it, the game station, which people can use to unwind and play games between outings and the adventures they'll get up to. And having this and playing it regularly gives them bonuses to saving throws against illusion effects. So it'll help keep them on their toes and help them recognize when people are maybe trying to put one over on them. Next we have Crumb, the Skittermander Tinkerer themed mechanic. Again, the experimental explosive mechanic. And his key NPC is his friend Z, the security officer. She, too, is a cyberborn, much like Achilles, only her character is much more heavily replaced with cybernetics. She's, portrayed as probably largely 75% cybernetic body. But she's, young, upbeat woman. She's she's band security and one of the roadies. Helps keep an eye on things on the bridge and in the odd fight. Crumb brought with him the jailbroken food dispenser. And I would have to look up exactly what that does, but it allows them to basically have gourmet meals whenever they want. And I believe it helps in social situations, or some such effect. JJ's character Achilles Troy, the cyberborn keyboard player. He's an operative, computer hacker. We're going to have to try and play into that a little bit more. His key NPC is Bob. Bob is a crafter. He is a Raxolite, an 18-inch tall onion who makes things specifically good at crafting cybernetics, as well as medical stuff. So he'll be good for helping create serums of healing, things like that. Any other kind of recovery medication they need if they want cybernetic enhancements. He gets an edge in making those, and he's Achilles' guy. He's Achilles' cyberdoc. And And Achilles brought with him a manufacturer's grade crafting station that that can be used to give any weaponry that's made in it one of the manufacturer weapon bonuses. And there are a few of those. I'm not sure which one he's chosen yet. I'll have to double check with him on that and let him decide. I think that he was looking at the one for weapon charging. I basically gives you a free charging dock on the ship or something of that effect. To allow the group to rapidly reload any weapons that they upgrade. And with the new weapon building system in Starfinder Enhanced that I'm absolutely going to allow the players to use if they want, it makes it easy to do that. Gives them a reason to say, hey, yeah, let's make use of this feature. Let's make this cool, nifty weapon that's a little bit different than a normal weapon. Zane chose Themeless as his theme, ironically enough, which seems very fitting for somebody like Weird Al, or based on Weird Al. It seems very fitting for the character as somebody who's kind of there in the background, but he's the envoy. He's good at giving direction and keeping the group, focused. He's a decent talker, but he doesn't have anything special theme-wise that stands out about him, which is kind of nice. I like that idea. He's the envoy, so he gets to give orders, do his get-ems, keep the group focused on who to attack, and the group's been good about following those directions and making use of the bonuses that he can give them. His NPC that he has brought to the mix is the Winged Gibrani Blue Scarab. They're a beetle-like race, insectoid. And the Blue Scarab is a xenodruid who helps provide medicinals for the reptile. Yes. He's a mystic who will be able to help heal the group, recover ability damage, that kind of thing, and again, provide medicinals for the reptile and any other support the group that might need them. And Zane brought, or not Zane, Strange Ed brought with him the cleaning facilitation systems, which keep the ship clean and tidy, which will come up after the next session. Because I believe the ship will need some tidying after that. And that gives the group bonuses to fortitude saves against poison and disease, I believe, if they spent time in the ship over the last 24 hours. Keep them healthy. Because they're not necessarily going to be able to get off the ship to get replacement items or new items that will give them these kind of bonuses because it's an adventure path on rails. I'm not complaining about that. I know I say it about this adventure path because it is something that, as a GM, you kind of need to recognize up front because it can have an effect on how you run it. In this case, they set it up so that there are features in the adventure path and the setup for the adventure path that lend itself to this. You have key NPCs. These are going to be the NPCs your characters know. Hey, look, they each have a neat special ability that can help you. And you each have to choose one. So that there are NPCs for you to interact with regularly. And because this is a largely it's a role-play heavy adventure path, more so than some like Attack of the Swarm, for instance. So having the NPCs in there to provide that interaction and to help provide maybe some explanation when the characters aren't quite understanding what's going on around them, because some of the stuff going on is weird. They're very useful as a GM and for the players. It provides you and the players as with a direct personal investiture in what's going on. The last character, Umbra, is again an icon. There were a lot of icons in this group, which makes sense. I mean, they're a band. They all want to be famous. But there were a couple other things too: the Cyberborn and the Tinkerer and the Themeless, which is kind of neat. Umbra is a witch warper. She is a Kyle. She is from the Shadow Plane, which is the mirror world, the mirror dimension, as it were, if you were a follower of Star Trek. The mirror universe. And her NPC is the sage Nephia, who is an Elibrian from Eox, which is where Umbra went to get her training. Nephia is her mentor. Nephia is not necessarily a witch warper, but she knows a lot about the planes. She's studied it greatly. Rumors have it that Nephia might perhaps be a living descendant of one of the ancient bone sages of Eox. She's from, they met in the halls of the living, where Nephia is from. And Nephia has run away from there to join Umbra on the tour for the band, for their new album, which will come up in the game. It'll come up in the next session. Actually, it'll be a central part of one of the encounters. And if I'm not mistaken, Umbra brought with her integrated toolkits, and that will allow the characters to have certain toolkits available to them at all times, anytime they're on the ship, which would be useful. They've got a med bay and they've got a tech bay. In my games, I've largely decided to adjust it from necessarily needing a weapons bay or a tech bay or this bay or that bay. I've just broken it down to tech bays. I've even gone so far as to allow people to use their hack suite, if it's of the holosuite variety, to create a makeshift tech bay. It's not as good as a full tech bay. There's limitations to it, but if you don't have a tech bay, why not use a holosuite to create the tools you've got? Because that's kind of what holosuites do, right? It's a StarTech holosuite. That's how they work. That's my theory anyway. But like I said, because it's an adventure path on rails, it's very self-contained, these key NPCs are going to become important to the game. And some of them already have been. Nephia has been consulted 2 or 3 times. Once when the ship ended up in hell, then when they ended up in an alternate universe, and then when they ran into alternate versions of themselves in this alternate universe and invited them to dinner, because that was Flair's idea. And I got to meet them. You know, it allowed me to have an NPC to give the new players a breakdown of a little bit of the history of the Starfinder universe, because a couple of them didn't really have that history or know much about it. And let me do it in-game, because you've just come to an alternate universe and things are different here. They already knew things were different. They picked up on a couple of things. So it allowed me to do well, okay, if things are different here, it might be something big, so let's do a refresher on all the big events from the Pact Worlds in the last 300 years. Take advantage of that to spell something out, not only for the players, but for the people watching. Great fun. And, bringing up Bob in discussion. Bob's got a bit of a Scottish accent. He's just a little onion man. He's the bass player, and I just thought that accent would go well with somebody who's just setting the rhythm on the bass. Rick is a California surfer Vesk. Everybody's got a little bit of a voice of their own, and I'm trying to play up the key NPCs as much as I can. They're not super important to the story, but they have to be the NPCs of the story. They have to be the people that the players know, and the players have leaned very nicely into it. You know, Flair hangs out with Rick playing video games. You know, Crumb made a point of hanging out and chatting with Z. Nefia goes and hangs out with, or Umbria hangs out with Nefia because they're pretty sure a couple. You know, so their personalities are starting to take shape, and I'm looking forward to seeing them continue to take shape. And if you've been watching for the first few sessions, you have learned that there are other people on board the ship as well. The members of the pirate crew that attacked the ship at the very beginning of the game have remained on board. Primarily, their lead crew. The pirate Captain Cobalt is on board, and plans have taken seed for him. Hints are slowly being dropped as to what might have exactly happened and might be happening with him. But he was when the ship, the Primarata, escaped hell and escaped through the chaos maelstrom and the vortex and everything. He was stuck on the outside of the ship. Got to see it firsthand. And with the ties he has to greater powers, his view of things was skewed slightly. He's been a little erratic since they got him back on board. Little off. And I'm looking forward to having fun with him as the game continues, because he's remained on board the ship. His first officer, Montecito, Captain Cobalt is a Phantomite of a class the characters are unaware of, but he's the pirate captain, and ostensibly plays the jazzy sex whistle. He plays the saxophone. His first officer is still aboard the ship. First officer Montecito, she is a Lashunta technomancer. The characters know she's a technomancer. They've been on the receiving end of her magic a time or two when the pirates were attempting to take over the ship. And I've had a few ideas in mind for her. She's not quite so enamored of the crew as the captain seems to be, but she's willing to follow the captain's orders and seems to be working with the crew well so far. But I've got a few ideas of things I might do with her. I've got two or three different ones. I'm not sure exactly which direction I'll take her, but it's nice to have these extra NPCs on board that aren't the key NPCs who arguably should be and should remain and should always be helpful to the characters. These are extra NPCs who the characters have brought on board, who are traveling with them, who ostensibly are working with them, who don't currently have reason to work against them, but you never know. Maybe they will. The next person is the pirate's Dr. Navra. She's a human. She was the ship's doctor. And I have a very firm character set in mind for her. I am basing her off the character played by Marcia Gay Harden in the TV show Code Black. It was a modern-day hospital procedural about a hospital in California that is constantly overwhelmed. It's set in the ER, and she's one of the doctors in the ER. And she's a no-nonsense doctor. You know, she cares about her people, but you step into the OR, you step into the med bay, that's her space. And she's in charge there. And when the characters welcomed her aboard the ship, she made it abundantly clear that the med bay is hers. You set foot in there, she's in charge, and she's not going to brook debate about it. She's very firm. And I think I played her up well, and I'm looking forward to seeing these characters and the NPCs interact and how the story develops with them. And the last new NPC they've added is the pirate's engineer Zev. Zev is a non-combatant, plain and simple. He's very nervous. He's an assistant engineer, and has been helping out in the engine room. They're trying to figure out how their new engine works, their new chaos signal engine. Um, I have a feeling Sev may be destined for a an unfortunate end, but we'll see. We'll see. He's an interesting character. He's but the group has a mechanic and a technician already. They don't specifically need a third mechanic, but you never know. Maybe something will come up and he'll become a really interesting character. Or maybe something will happen and at the appropriate time he will no longer be an interesting character. The story of the game has progressed well so far. I've enjoyed how it's turned out. It's got more twists and turns in it as you play. They come a little bit faster than you expect sometimes, which was fun in the first few sessions because they went from being attacked by pirates to crash landing in hell to escaping hell to an alternate dimension to what comes next, and it will continue from there. And it's a fun story where you can set the setup as, hey, you guys are a band. You're going to your first gig. And the story becomes something very different than that. But, I mean, it's still that. They're still on the way to their first gig. They're just having to take a very roundabout route to get there. It'll be a very interesting roundabout route. So that is where we're going to wrap up our first Drift Crashers campaign journals. The next journal will drop in about a month, where I discuss the process involved in creating the alternate universe twins of the Drifters. I'm working on the script for that. I'm looking forward to recording that one as well. That one will get more into the mechanics of how I approach the creation of encounters and things like that. Because creating alternate universe versions of the characters should be about more than just saying, okay, well, you're a technomancer, you're a witch warper, you're a mechanic, you're a vanguard, you're an envoy, you're whatever you are. It's got to be more than that. There's got to be something interesting to them. There's got to be something that's going to make them interesting to the players. Individually and as a group. I want each of these characters to have something about them that is interesting and kind of personal to their alternate player. So, if this kind of content interests you, please give the video a like and follow the channel for the further adventures of the Drift Crashers. Until next time, wings up, Drifters.